Okay. Alright. Most people know what an intelligence quotient is, but did you know that there's an emotional quotient as well? It's called emotional intelligence, often referred to as EQ or EI. Today we're going to discuss what emotional intelligence is, where it can be applied, and how it can be used. First, let's define emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships sensibly and empathetically. Emotions create physiological responses that can be measured in terms of neurological, muscular, respiratory, and hormonal changes, which can lead to increased stress, higher levels of adrenaline and cortisol, strained breathing, and high blood pressure. Executing emotional intelligence requires you to be aware of your own emotions, manage your own emotions, be aware of other people's emotions, and manage other people's emotions. Doing so will allow you to effectively communicate with others. Your current level of emotional intelligence can be increased by engaging with your subjective well-being, altruistic behavior, and the degree of empathy you have for other people. The term subjective well-being is the reactions you have and the cognitive judgments that you make that are affected by the emotions you are currently experiencing. For example, on my wedding day, my father was late and my maid of honor without warning didn't attend. Because this was such an important event in my life, I didn't permit their actions to ruin the occasion. I controlled this by not showing my anger and my disappointment. I was able to take control of my emotions by utilizing a few breathing techniques, removing the temptation to contact them, and focusing on my family and friends that were present even though I was livid. I could have had an emotional breakdown, made 100 angry phone calls, or sent profane and belligerent text messages, but instead I pushed it all aside and focused on the happiness that surrounded the occasion and acted as though it had no effect on the day. Your next priority to increasing emotional intelligence is affirming altruistic behavior. As stated by Huang Jiatao in his social behavior and personality studies, altruistic behavior is intentionally and voluntarily helping others to enhance their welfare with no anticipation of receiving material benefits or external rewards. In other words, be kind and offer assistance to those in need without expecting anything in return. Simply opening the door for a stranger, assisting your spouse with bringing in the groceries, helping your child completing a homework assignment, and volunteering at your local animal shelter are all examples of affirming altruistic behavior. Furthermore, the continual issuance of empathy will also assist you in raising your emotional intelligence quotient. Empathy is being able to put yourself in another person's shoes. The top reasons why arguments occur is due to personality differences, lack of openness, physical and emotional stress, differences in values, egos, and miscommunication. When arguments arise due to these reasons, the best way to reach a resolve is by asking questions to further your understanding of the other person's perspective. This may be done with conscious thought or by physically asking the other person. The objective is to put aside your viewpoint and to see the topic from the other person's perspective. You will want to validate what the other person's perspective is and then examine your attitude to ensure that it is appropriate for the current conversation. The best way to do this is to listen, not only to the words but also to the pitch and tone. Next, you will want to watch for body movements and gestures that may indicate more to the conversation than what words are failing to add. Finally, be curious. If you don't understand why someone believes in something or does something differently than you do, then ask them why. Not only will it further your understanding of that person, but you may also learn something new as well. Next, we will determine where emotional intelligence can be applied. The ability to efficiently execute emotional intelligence can lead to greater life satisfaction, better relationships, and effective leadership. Emotional intelligence can be applied anywhere and with anybody, whether it be at work, with strangers, or with family and friends. As previously stated, we must be able to recognize emotions and influence emotional control in ourselves and with others. The process of this is usually automatic. However, emotional intelligence is becoming conscious of these components and knowing how to manipulate them. Working in human resources enables me to interact with all types of personalities, including those who are easy to anger. I once had a gentleman come into my office, slam the door, and began screaming at me because his paycheck was incorrect. I could have cried, I could have screamed back at him, or I could have demanded that he leave my office, but instead, I sat there with my hands in my lap and a pleasant smile on my face while I waited for him to finish. During the 7-minute-long tantrum, he was swearing, talking in circles, and waving his hands around like a music conductor. When he was finished, I said, "Let's take a look and see what's going on." Throughout the remainder of our interactions, I maintained my calmness, initiated small talk, and the employee started to ease up on his aggression. We inevitably determined that he was absent for a day and a half, and his child support garnishment was court ordered to begin on that paycheck. Once again, he was quick to anger, but this time it was because of the garnishment. He stormed out of my office, slammed the door again, and left the facility prior to the end of his shift. The next day, he was terminated for violating our code of conduct policy and for insubordination. If I had reacted the way my emotions were encouraging me to, I may have also been fired that day. It is much easier to take control of our own emotions than it is to control the emotions of others. Individuals who believe they perceive their own emotions accurately and can also interpret negative moods in order to prolong positive ones experience less anxiety and depression while having overall better mental health and vitality. This was a high-stress, high-anxiety situation, and I was able to effectively use emotional intelligence in order to take control of my emotions. Finally, how does one use emotional intelligence? The best way to take control of our emotions is to determine why am I feeling this way. Likewise, when trying to understand and recognize other people's emotions, we should ask ourselves, why are they feeling this way? Once this is established, we can determine what our external reactions will be regardless of the emotions that we are currently feeling. When emotions are driving a conversation, it may be acceptable to state, I do not have the emotional intelligence to have this conversation right now, or you could say something to the effect of, neither of us seems to be in the right mindset for this discussion. Once this statement has been made, it's imperative to request a different time to revisit the discussion as to show respect for the topic at hand. This will also give both parties time to think about what their future reactions will be. Using phrases such as, I'm doing the best I can, how can I further assist you, and what can I do to help you are just a few examples of ways that we can control other people's emotions. Try it out for yourselves. It's really difficult for someone to continue down the path of anger and belligerence when you're being empathetic and kind. However, like the example of the hot-headed employee, this isn't always effective. Just remember that the more you practice emotional intelligence, the more automatic it will become. Benjamin Franklin once said, anger is never without reason, but seldom a good one. I encourage you to challenge the thought or action that has triggered you to feel the way you're feeling. Timing matters. The earlier this is done, the easier it will be for you to take control. If this doesn't work, then you'll want to de-escalate the emotion that you're currently feeling as quickly as possible. Techniques that are commonly used to maintain self-control include going for a walk, taking a drive, engaging in a positive distraction, walking away from the conversation, taking 5 deep breaths, and counting to 10. Emotional intelligence is directly linked to mental, physical, and social health. By effectively using emotional intelligence, we can not only better our relationships and our communication skills, but we can also alleviate stress, anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, and other associated medical issues. Generally speaking, emotional intelligence can be implemented in any situation. Now that you know what emotional intelligence is, where it can be applied, and how it can be used, you should be able to practice this newfound quotient and see a drastic change in your interpersonal communications.
Good job.